Here's something hard to believe. One of the most powerful substances in human history is probably sitting in your kitchen right now. It's not gold. It's not oil drilled from the ground. It's not some lost ancient weapon. It's a plain bottle of olive oil. That same liquid you pour into a pan without thinking? Thousands of years ago, it was treated like treasure. It lit up entire cities after dark. It healed the sick. It was rubbed onto kings the moment they were crowned. It filled the ships of empires and made some people unbelievably rich. Whole economies were built on it. Wars were fought near it. Gods were honored with it. All from a small, bitter fruit most people couldn't even eat. And here's how you know it really mattered. Picture a great ancient city. It could lose its silver and survive. It could lose its soldiers. New ones are always born. It could even lose its king, and another would take the throne. But take away its olive oil, and everything stopped. The lamps went dark, the kitchens went cold, the temples fell silent, the markets emptied. One missing liquid, and an entire city could fall apart. Quick thing before we go further. If there's a bottle of olive oil in your house right now, drop us like in the comments. Keep it close, because you're about to see it completely differently. That's the question hiding inside that ordinary bottle. How did one simple liquid, squeezed from a fruit humans couldn't even eat, quietly become one of the foundations of civilization? To find the answer, we have to go back, way back, to a world that didn't have it yet. The world before olive oil. Imagine a world with no easy light. The sun goes down, and your day is over. There are no switches, no bulbs. The only light comes from a flickering fire, and fire is dangerous indoors. So when night falls, most people simply stop. Now imagine a world where food spoils fast. You catch a fish, or pick some fruit, and within a day or two, it begins to rot. There are no fridges, no cans. If you can't eat it now, you might lose it forever. Now imagine hard, cracked skin under a burning sun. Wounds that get infected and won't heal. Medicine that is mostly guesswork. And almost nothing valuable enough to trade with strangers across the sea. This was the world of early people around the Mediterranean. They needed a few things. Badly. They needed light to stretch the day past sunset. They needed a way to preserve food so a good harvest could feed them later. They needed medicine for sickness and protection for their skin. And they needed trade goods, something other people wanted, so they could swap it for what they didn't have. Here's the strange part. They were missing something they didn't even have a name for yet. They were missing a single, reliable, multi-purpose liquid. One thing that could do many jobs at once. Water couldn't do it. Animal fat could do a little, but it went bad, and it was scarce. Honey was rare. Wine was for drinking. There was a hole in human life, shaped exactly like a problem nobody had solved. And the answer to almost every one of those problems was already growing wild on the hills all around them. Except it was small, hard, and tasted absolutely disgusting. The tree that changed everything. The wild olive tree was not impressive to look at. It was short and twisted. Its fruit was small, hard, and bitter. Bite into a fresh olive straight off a wild tree, and you will spit it out. It tastes terrible. In fact, here's something that surprises most people. Even today, you cannot eat an olive straight off the tree. A raw olive is packed with a bitter compound so harsh it makes your whole mouth pucker. Every single olive you have ever eaten, green, black, in a salad, on a pizza, was soaked and cured for weeks first, just to tame that bitterness. The ancient world had to crack that same puzzle by hand, learning to soak, salt, and wash the fruit until it finally became something a person could swallow. So for a long time, that bitter little fruit seemed almost useless. But the tree itself had a secret power. It was tough. Brutally tough. Olive trees can grow where almost nothing else will. They cling to dry, rocky soil. They survive long, hot summers with barely any rain. The Mediterranean climate, wet winters, dry summers, is exactly what they love. And here is the first thing that will make you look at an olive tree differently. Some olive trees live for over 1,000 years. A few are older than that. There are trees still growing today that were already old when ancient cities were young. One famous tree on the island of Crete is thought to be thousands of years old, and it still grows olives, a 1,000-year-old food source. Try to imagine that. Slowly, people learned to tame the wild tree. They chose the best ones. They planted their seeds and their branches. Over many lifetimes, the fruit grew a little bigger, a little better. But the real breakthrough wasn't the fruit. It was learning what was inside the fruit. Olives are full of oil. The problem is getting it out, so people began to crush them. First with stones, then with heavy presses, round wheels rolling over piles of olives, squeezing out a golden green liquid. The bitter fruit nobody wanted suddenly gave up a treasure, and this liquid was different from anything they had before. It didn't spoil quickly, it burned cleanly. It was smooth on the skin. It was good to eat. That bitter, useless fruit had been hiding a liquid that was about to reshape how human beings live. The liquid that built civilization. The sun has just gone down over an ancient village. A family sits in the gathering dark, the way families always have at the end of the day. Then someone reaches for a small clay bowl, fills it with golden oil, and lays a thread along the rim as a wick, a spark, a flame, and the whole room fills with soft, steady light. Now the children can still see each other's faces. The work doesn't have to stop just because the sun did. For the first time, the hours after sunset belong to them too. By that same light, the mother tips a little more of the oil over the evening meal. Plain bread, a few vegetables, and suddenly it's richer, warmer, something worth gathering around. Whatever can't be eaten tonight is packed into a jar and covered with oil, sealed away from the air, saved from rotting before morning. The youngest child has a scrape that won't heal. The same oil is rubbed gently over the wound. A grandparent's aching joints get the same treatment by the fire. To this family, this is medicine, and they are not foolish for believing it. Before sleep, someone smooths a little into dry, cracked skin and through tangled hair. Comfort, care, even a kind of beauty, all from the same bowl that lit the room and flavored the food. One liquid, one ordinary evening, and it quietly touched almost every part of it. And that family wasn't imagining things. One of the most famous doctors in all of history believed in this oil just as deeply. His name was Hippocrates, an ancient Greek healer so important that doctors still take a promise named after him today. He treated olive oil as a true healing tool, listing dozens and dozens of ways to use it. On wounds, on the skin, for pain, for sickness deep inside the body. So stop and look at what's really happening here. In our world, we buy a different product for every single job. One thing for light, one for cooking, one for medicine, one for soap, one for our skin. This one liquid was all of them at once. Imagine if a single bottle in your house was your lamp, your medicine cabinet, your soap, and your fridge, all together. That was olive oil. And a liquid this powerful doesn't just change one family's evening. It was about to change the shape of human society itself. How olive oil organized society here is something most people never think about. An olive tree is not in a hurry. If you plant one today, you will wait years before it gives you a real harvest. Sometimes you wait a decade or more before the tree is strong and full. A young person who plants an olive grove may be old before it truly pays off. And that waiting was dangerous. Picture a farmer who has done everything right. He has cleared the land, planted his young trees, and cared for them season after season. Then the rains fail. A long, cruel drought settles over the land. The leaves curl and brown. The few olives that form are shriveled and dry. A whole year of hope, gone. Maybe more than 1 year. This was the gamble at the heart of the olive. The tree gave great rewards, but only to people willing to wait, to risk, to lose, and then begin again. So why did anyone do it? Because the reward, when it came, was worth everything. And because of how the olive forced people to live. To grow olives, you couldn't just wander. You couldn't pack up and move every season like a hunter chasing food. You had to stay. You had to choose a piece of land and protect it. You had to care for those trees for years, through droughts and good seasons alike. And often, you weren't even planting for yourself. You were planting for your grandchildren. A farmer would dig holes and plant young trees knowing he might never taste their best oil. His children might. His grandchildren certainly would. The grove was a gift to people not yet born. Think about what that does to a person's mind. It teaches patience. It teaches long-term thinking. It ties a family to one place across many lifetimes. And it pulled people together. The harvest came once a year, and it was a huge job. Families, neighbors, whole villages worked side by side. The seasons of the olive set the rhythm of the community. Then came the press, the place where olives were crushed into oil. A press was expensive and important. Not everyone could own one. So it became a center of the local economy, a place people gathered, traded, and depended on. A little like a bank made of stone and wood. So here is the perspective shift. Bread fed people day by day, but the olive did something deeper. It rewarded patience. It rewarded the people who stayed, planned, survived the bad years, and built for a future they might never see. It quietly pushed humans toward permanent homes, stable farms, and lasting economies. But a treasure that takes a lifetime to grow has a dark side. It can be destroyed in a single afternoon. Picture it. An enemy army marches into your land. They don't only steal your food or burn your house. They walk straight into your olive grove, the one your grandfather planted, and they set the trees on fire. This really happened, around 2,400 years ago, during a long and bitter war between the Greek cities. A Spartan army poured into the farmland around Athens and put the olive groves to the torch. And the people of Athens climbed up onto their city walls and watched the smoke rise off their own land. They were desperate to charge out and stop it. Their leader could barely hold them back. Why such horror over some trees? Because everyone understood what that fire really meant. Burn a wheat field, and it grows back next season. But burn a grove of ancient olive trees, and you haven't just destroyed one harvest, you've destroyed the work of generations, and stolen oil from children who weren't even born yet. That was the moment the world truly understood what it was holding. Olive oil wasn't just useful. It was so precious and so slow to replace that men would now tax it, steal it, fight over it, and go to war for it. And controlling it was about to mean controlling the sea itself. Whoever controlled the oil controlled the sea. Now the story leaves the farm and gets on a boat. Olive oil had a problem that turned into an opportunity. Not everywhere can grow olives. The tree is picky. It needs that special Mediterranean weather. So some lands had plenty of oil, and others had none. That gap is where fortunes are made. If you have something everyone needs, and other people can't make it themselves, you have power. Real power. The first great masters of this were the Phoenicians, bold sailors and traders from the eastern Mediterranean. They loaded oil onto ships and carried it far across the water, trading it for silver, metals, and goods from distant shores. Their boats stitched the sea together with trade routes. Then came the Greeks. For them, olive oil wasn't just a product, it was part of who they were. In their legends, the goddess Athena gave the city of Athens its first olive tree, and that gift was so precious, the city was named in her honor. Olive oil was a Greek treasure, and they traded it everywhere they sailed. Here's a name worth remembering: Solon, a famous lawmaker of Athens. Athens needed food, and grain was precious, so Solon is said to have made a bold rule. Farmers were not allowed to ship most of their crops out of the city. They were needed at home. But there was one exception: olive oil. Olive oil was allowed to be sold abroad. A leader looked at everything his land produced and decided this one liquid was so valuable, so perfect for trade, that it should be sent out to make the city rich. But let's make this real. Behind every trade route stood a person taking a risk. Picture one merchant on the docks. He has spent nearly everything he owns to fill a ship with jars of oil. If the voyage goes well, he comes home wealthy enough to change his family's life forever. If a storm takes the ship, or pirates find it, or the oil spoils on the way, he is ruined. He stands there and watches his ship leave the harbor, carrying his entire future in its belly. Multiply that one man by thousands, across hundreds of years, and you have the engine of the ancient economy. Brave, nervous people betting their fortunes on a liquid. To move all that oil, traders used special clay jars called amphorae, tall, with two handles and a pointed bottom. They were the perfect shipping containers of the ancient world, and ships were packed with thousands of them. So follow the chain. Some lands had oil, others desperately wanted it. Merchants risked everything to carry it across the sea. Cities that controlled the oil and the routes grew wealthy and strong. Whoever controlled the oil controlled the trade, and whoever controlled the trade controlled the sea. A bottle of cooking oil had become a map of power. But the marketplace was not the highest place this oil would reach. It was about to climb all the way onto the heads of kings. When olive oil became sacred. When something becomes truly important to people, it stops being ordinary. It becomes holy. That is exactly what happened to olive oil. In the temples, the sacred lamps burned with it. A flame that never went out, fed by a steady supply of oil, was a powerful symbol. The gods, people believed, deserved the best light, and the best light came from the olive. But it went much further than lamps. Olive oil became the liquid of blessing. When a king was crowned in some ancient lands, he was not just handed a crown. He was anointed. Oil was poured or rubbed onto his head as a sign that he was chosen, set apart, lifted above other men. Oil marked the exact moment an ordinary person became a ruler. This idea ran so deep that it shaped language and religion for thousands of years. The words Messiah and Christ both come from the idea of the anointed one, the one marked with sacred oil. A simple kitchen ingredient sat at the very center of how people imagined holiness and kingship. Then there were the athletes. And this is where it gets truly strange. In ancient Greece, sport was almost a sacred act, and the greatest stage was the games. Before competing, athletes coated their entire bodies in olive oil until they gleamed. Then they wrestled, ran, and fought, bare, shining, slippery from head to toe. And winning could make you rich. In Athens, the champions of the great games weren't handed a small gold medal. They were handed olive oil, poured from the city's sacred trees. A single top winner could walk away with a mountain of oil so large he could sell it and become wealthy. Imagine being paid for a sports victory in cooking oil, and that prize being a fortune. Now here is the part that will really stick with you. After a competition, athletes scraped the mixture of oil, sweat, and dust off their skin with a curved metal tool, and that grimy scraped-off paste was not thrown away. It was collected, and it was sold as medicine. People actually paid money for the scraped sweat and oil of famous athletes, believing it could heal and soothe the body. Read that again. A used, dirty mixture scraped off a wrestler's skin, for sale, at a price. The olive even had its own hidden class system. People sorted the oil into grades long before any modern label existed. The finest oil might be saved for the gods, for kings, or for healing the sick. The cheapest was slopped into lamps and burned for light, or used to scrub the floor. Think about how strange that is. The same fruit, from the same branch, could become oil worthy of a god, or fuel you set on fire. A single liquid with rich and poor versions of itself. So look how far this oil had traveled. It started as food. It became light. It became wealth. And now it sat on the heads of kings, in the temples of gods, and on the bodies of champions. And anything this sacred and this valuable was about to be seized by the most powerful empire the world had ever seen. The industry of empires. Then came Rome. The Romans did to olive oil what they did to almost everything. They made it bigger, faster, and more organized than the world had ever seen. To Romans, olive oil was not a luxury for the rich few. It was a daily need for nearly everyone. Rich and poor cooked with it, washed with it, and lit their homes with it. A huge empire of people all wanted the same liquid, every single day. The most powerful Romans understood this. Leaders like Julius Caesar and, after him, the first emperor Augustus, knew that a hungry, angry city was a dangerous city. So Rome handed out food and basic goods to its people to keep them fed and calm. Oil was part of how an empire kept the peace, a quiet tool of power, given out by the most powerful men alive. Roman soldiers received oil too. To feed an empire and march its legions, you needed a steady river of it, so the Romans built an industry to feed that hunger. Across their lands, especially in southern Spain, a region they called Baetica, they planted olive groves on a giant scale. Not small family plots, but plantations stretching across the countryside. Whole regions were turned over to growing olives and making oil. Around it grew jobs, towns, presses, jar makers, sailors, and merchants. And the Romans tracked every drop. The oil jars were often stamped with marks showing where the oil came from, who made it, who inspected it, and how much it weighed. It was an early form of labeling and quality control, a way to trace a single product across a vast empire. The great Roman writer Pliny the Elder even studied and recorded which oils were best and how they were made, treating the olive as one of nature's essential gifts. So they grew it everywhere. They labeled it, they studied it, they moved it by the shipload. Now here is the fact that shows what all of that added up to. At its peak, the great city of Rome was swallowing at least 7.5 million liters of olive oil every single year. Picture that as a river of oil flowing into one city, year after year, century after century, just to keep its lamps lit and its people fed. And we know this because of the garbage. The empty oil jars had to go somewhere. In Rome, the broken ones were piled up in one place, over and over, for hundreds of years. They piled so high that they formed an actual hill, one you can still climb today. That hill is made of roughly 53 million broken olive oil jars. The oil they once held adds up to something like 6 billion liters. Read that again. A man-made mountain, built entirely from the empty containers of a single product. This wasn't trade anymore. This was one of the first great global industries in human history, all built on the oil of a small bitter fruit. Empires would crumble into dust, but the story of this oil refused to end, and it leads straight to the bottle sitting in your kitchen. The modern bottle jumped forward across the centuries, past the fall of empires, all the way to today. The oil is still here, but the lamp is gone. We light our homes with electricity now, so olive oil lost its oldest job, giving light. Yet instead of disappearing, it found new ones. Today, machines crush olives in factories that the Romans could never have imagined. The finest grade is called extra virgin olive oil from the first pressing, with nothing added and nothing changed. It is treated as the best of the best. But here's a twist worth remembering. Through much of history, the freshest, greenest oil wasn't always seen as the most precious. Different ages prized different oils for different jobs. The idea that extra virgin sits at the very top is, in part, a more modern story we tell about quality. Then science gave olive oil a second life. Researchers studying people around the Mediterranean noticed something. Those who ate lots of olive oil, vegetables, and fish often seemed to live long, healthy lives. The Mediterranean diet became famous around the world. Suddenly, an ancient food was being praised as a modern health secret, almost the way Hippocrates praised it thousands of years ago. Demand exploded. Today, olive oil is shipped to every corner of the planet. The Mediterranean still grows the vast majority of it, with Spain alone making a huge share of the world's supply. And where there is value, there is crime. This is one of the strangest echoes in the whole story. Faking olive oil is big business, and it always has been. Even in ancient times, sellers cheated buyers with low-quality, mislabeled oil. Today, that trick has grown into a shadow industry worth billions. Criminal operations take cheap, low-grade oil, color it, blend it, and stamp extra virgin on the label. Some bottles sitting on store shelves right now aren't really what they claim to be. A multi-billion-dollar crime ring, built on faking salad dressing. But the newest threat is something the ancients couldn't picture. The climate is changing, and the olive is feeling it. In recent years, brutal heat and long droughts hammered the Mediterranean, especially Spain. Harvests collapsed. With far less oil to sell, prices shot up to record highs. In some places, the price more than doubled. It got so extreme that olive oil became one of the most stolen products in all of Spain. Real thieves, targeting cooking oil. Organized gangs hauled it off by the truckload to sell on the black market. Supermarkets started locking bottles behind security tags and glass, guarding olive oil like perfume or jewelry. People began calling it liquid gold, and they meant it. When the rains finally returned, harvests began to recover, and prices started to ease. But farmers know the truth. The weather that olives have depended on for thousands of years is becoming harder and harder to count on. So the ancient drama is still playing out, right now, in our lifetime. A precious oil, a risky harvest, soaring prices, thieves, fakes, and lockboxes. The names have changed, the story has not. Conclusion. Now come back to where you started. A kitchen. An ordinary day. Someone reaches for a plain bottle. They pour a little golden green oil onto a piece of bread, or into a hot pan. The food sizzles. It smells good. They take a bite and think nothing of it. Just cooking. Just oil. They have no idea what they're holding. They don't picture the wild, twisted trees clinging to rocky hills, older than entire civilizations. They don't see the farmer staring at a drought-killed harvest, then planting again for grandchildren he would never meet. They don't see the people of Athens on their walls, watching the smoke rise from groves their grandfathers planted. They don't hear the Greek champions, gleaming with oil, scraping it off to be sold. They don't see the kings, heads wet with sacred oil, the moment they became rulers. They don't watch the nervous merchant on the dock, betting his whole fortune on one ship full of jars. They don't see the hill in Rome, 53 million broken jars, 6 billion liters, the leftovers of an empire's thirst. And they don't feel the worried farmer today, looking up at a hot, dry sky, waiting for rain. All of that is in the bottle. The light of ancient cities, the medicine of ancient healers, the wealth of trading empires, the blessing of kings, the shine of champions. Thousands of years of human patience, risk, faith, and trade, pressed out of one small bitter fruit. We began with a question. How did one simple liquid become powerful enough to build empires? The answer is that olive oil was never really just oil. It was light when there was darkness, food that lasted, medicine when there was little, money you could pour, and a blessing fit for gods and kings. So that bottle in your kitchen, the one some of you went and checked at the very start, go pick it up. Look at it for 1 second, because inside it is thousands of years of civilization, and you'll never look at it the same way again.